Hello you. The animated series has always been praised for its consummate depiction of the character, articulating the franchise's core visual tug in a pitch-black style. It was inevitable, therefore, that people would want to see it taken to the next level, as a feature-length film. That came to us as Mask of the Phantasm. This was a standalone story concerning the Batman's origin, a mystery thriller as Bruce hunts down a new, far more murderous caped crusader tied to his past. Originally planned to go direct to video, Warner Brothers changed their minds and gave it a cinematic release in the Christmas of '93. And while box office earnings were initially poor, it would go on to become a cult classic, blah 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 blah. Look, I don't think I'm bringing anything new to the table here if I just say it's good. You've already got plenty of other people out there also saying it's the best, the best, the best, the best! So, just to be a complete asshat, I'm gonna say that nobody's really cracked its brilliance yet. For me at least, fucking typical. There's been a lot of similar talking points and some great insight, but I'm not sure anyone really nails exactly why it has an edge over its live-action counterparts. Bold claim. Now I gotta back that up. Oh no. I'm gonna give it a go at least. Use them book learning smarts for once. In brief, I think it speaks to the power of animation as a medium, and how it's been used to give us a truly definitive Batman film. I'm sorry, Ben. Saved you a click.
Oh my god, this fucking meme. My ex won't die and I must scream.
So, Batman is, horribly oversaturated. Comics, films, belts, cheeses, garden gnomes, I'm sure. Everyone's got a favourite version to choose from, and some, like the show's own creators, are fans of them all. Some people even like that really bad one. I say that like there's only one. Each interpretation often extrapolates on a specific aspect of the character, and they're all perfectly valid. Don't worry, I'm not one to take away from the all-inclusive Bat experience and ice cream. But you know, if you do it wrong, you do it wrong.
I really want to apologize.
The question here is why the animated series is still considered the most definitive of the bunch. All these attempts to bring it to life, all this money and attention, and it's the Saturday morning cartoon that continues to dominate interpretations thereafter. Is it just because it follows deep comic lore? Is it because it's dark and No, this is not a funny joke. Part of it, and this is the short version, is that the abstractive mediums of animation and illustration are at an extreme advantage in effectively adapting Batman, an emotionally intense idea. Simple, right? No? Oh, you fucking dense, made sense to me. Alright, let's roll back a bit. Since Genghis hit up China, man has wondered whether or not superheroes can work in live action. The answer is, well, yeah, but as we learnt, it's not enough to put on a costume and stick a camera in front of a guy. And then it depends on which superhero. When someone makes a conscious choice to dress up as a bat to scare people, you have officially gone all in. This is a heightened operatic idea. It isn't served well when represented in the starkness of reality. Comics were the natural medium to cloud that issue when it began. Something that was figurative and populist, but also easy to make fantastical. The problem is that Batman's broody nature appeals to emerging emotions of angst and being taken seriously, and there is always an intense desire from the next budding generation to see that represented as literally as possible. Many creators have made valiant attempts to make it work for a mainstream market, but in doing so, I think they just missed the woods for the trees. Christopher Nolan is a talented man, and has made some talented films. The DK trilogy has some sick ideas, like letting you play as Lanky Kong, fucking finally, but I don't think his overall execution of those ideas are as effective as he thinks they are. I get the attraction of his stuff, to the idea of intellectualism and at the time of mainstream movie acceptance. As mentioned, people wanted to feel that Batman was something grand and meaningful, and his movies needed to blend slick real-world cinema with the stylized trappings of operatic Batman. Nolan does embellish his more realistic work with heightened dialogue and imagery to suit this, but I can't help but feel that a lot of it is, it's overcooked, you know?
You fucking donkey!
Characters appear in real-world settings, but talk in ham-fisted monologues and forced conversations, a trait endemic to the Nolan brothers' love of endless words, he says from his glass house. Even if we allow for verbal stylization, Shakespeare it ain't. Quality of the writing within the comics is debatable too, but they often have the benefit of the art and reader's mind filling in the quality blanks. The approach in visual direction and performance here lacks consistency with this real-world ideal. Some people hitting it out of the park, and some just, I don't know, was this acting? Are you asleep? Are you awake? Does he direct all his women to smirk? Am I just a misogyny? It's the lack of self-awareness in so many areas that baffles me. If you take 100 painkillers, you don't become superpowered. You fucking die. So we see endless arguing over the little details like the voice and
the bat gun bender.
Because people don't seem fully invested in this lack of tonal cohesion. Nolan's Batman wants to be many things, but never seems comfortable with its identity, and I think that should have been the first thing addressed. Priorities, my friend. Ancient Greek philosopher, he invented the bath. Snyder comes up on similar charges for different reasons. The issue we have here is a guy who loves superheroes, but who has a very defensive approach to getting them mainstream attention. He wants them taken seriously by adults, and thinks that the way to do that is to insert a lot of overblown symbolism without much compelling justification, which often just makes them come across as shallow. Guy's got it down to an art.
The thing that got me excited about Turkish Airlines was their global reach, and that they're a global brand, and that they could bring to our project this awareness, and they represent a certain quality of product that is really at a high level. And I think that the relationship with Turkish Airlines, that's really exciting for us.
Still, the reasons for his stepping down were genuinely tragic, and the actions taken by the studio in his wake only served to cement our view of Warner Brothers' equally shallow decision-making abilities. None of this feels like he really thought about it. I swear, every time she talks, it's like she's trying to sell me fucking Lucasade. It's just so tepid, so embarrassed to be honest with us. You can't phone this in, and nobody knew that better than the 60s show and the late great Adam West, God love him. Hey, I'm not saying that this is the best or most definitive version, absolutely not. What it is a very well realised adaptation of the spirit of the comics at the time. You want to talk larger than life? You want to talk operatic? Look, Batman's beating up the Riddler while holding a fucking cat. People seem to have branded this as a so bad it's funny show, which ignores that the intention was always to create something deliberately camp, especially when they were trying to be straight.
You spend all your spare time studying.
Ah, sure, I used to maybe, but who needs it anymore? You're looking at a guy who's seen the light, Sue, baby.
William Dozier wanted a show that gave in completely to the absurdity of the comics without apology, and every aspect of the production caters to this design theory. Did you know the camera was tilted whenever the villains were on screen to show that they were crooked? They knew what they were doing. I fucking love it. You don't get the Lego Batman movie without this shit, But obviously it didn't capture the darker, emotional aspects that had been there since the beginning, and one man helped pave the way for many artists after him to do just that. Tim Burton's Batman, inspired in part by Frank Miller's comic adaptation at the time, was considered defining at one point. Debating quality and cliches of later works aside, the guy's a trained artist and animator, with roots in many of the influences that shaped Batman's evolution, and a keen eye for how to take live-action visuals and stylize them for the purpose of storytelling. His quasi-retro take on Gotham is an important innovation that would help inspire the animated series. More on that later. This sense of extreme sweet and sour in his work really plays on his Batman's key theme, duality. Keaton walks a perfect line between unassuming and unhinged, and Jack plays it up as a colourful but lecherous carny. He found a way to embrace the insanity of the concept without compromising on the sincerity of the emotion, and I think it works. Kind of. The sequel was where his audience started to drift. Certainly more stylised and more ambitious, but really in service to Burton's personal quirks. It's great to feel the director's vision in full force, I mean the work here is pretty stunning, but it's deliberately an exclusionary and disparate piece that serves to distance people from the characters, and is incredibly niche as a result. I guess we should extend this kind of support to Joel. I'd say not casting Arnold as Bane in a movie with Bane is a pretty avant-garde direction, so congrats.
Mr. Freeze is a very popular and sexy character.
But enough flapping my lips, what am I really getting at? I don't know, actually I do, shh. The problem is not that Batman can't be taken seriously in live action. The real problem, for whatever reason, is that they only ever take us so far. What a vague and shitty thing to say. Well, I mean, they're just so specific, so caught up in the production circumstances, bloated plot lines and uncanny disconnects, that they distract from the character's inherent values. I'm not saying they have to work around that, seems almost impossible. Truth be told, I think they're all mired in too much of the business's natural guff to ever feel like something transcendental at this stage. Stuff like this didn't help, so thanks for that. It's why I think Phantasm is so special. It lacks in budget and spectacle, but soars in its lasting impact. A concise story, strong artistic direction, and a fundamental understanding of where the character comes from have been used to create what is a much simpler, but much more effective piece of cinema. That's even more bullshit than usual, how do I get away with that? On a technical level, we identify strongly with cartoons. There's a concept talked of in Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics about how quickly we grasp simplified forms, be they depictions of actions, objects, or most importantly, humans. Humans interpret things figuratively all the time. The simpler the human form, the easier it is for us to project ourselves onto them and even relate to them. In a way, it's sort of cheating in creating initial likability or identification for a character. This makes artists invaluable in selling us ideas through their ability to observe these qualities, which is where Bruce Timm comes in. He's steeped in both animation and comic book influences, which brings his work the qualities of clarity and history. This means it's easy to understand his drawings at a quick glance, they read well, and the line quality itself carries all of the franchise's thematic baggage. Pulpy, bold, dark, heavy. The same can be said for the setting. The retro-infused design gives us a world we recognise but do not inhabit directly. It's removed from our own specific relationship to any real place, but has broad issues we can relate to on that representational level. Every occupation, prop and building can be identified quickly and with very little detail required. Eric Radomski did this wonderful painting conceptualizing their take on Gotham, and while there's no sense of tangible construction, the Impressionism still evokes a recognizably overwhelming atmosphere. All the big art words coming out today, folks, Jesus.
I'll buy this for 10 pennies, sir.
Phantasm uses this to capture the mood from the start. Simple CG templates are tactically decorated to give off the same sense of foreboding, an untraceable skyline that could sprawl for decades. Shirley Walker aids this with her powerful but emotionally dissonant score. She's even discussed how the song itself is constructed to rise to a question, only to fall at the answer.
It has two answers. One is a dark, somber answer. The other is a more heroic, uplifted answer.
Two elements that seem entirely insurmountable right up against each other. A perfect tonal window into the film. The series may echo the Bat mythos frequently, the movie references the titles Year 1 and Year 2, but what never gets enough credit is its use of its natural influences, everything gothic and everything noir. Effectively, dark deco. 20th century art movements influenced the comics at a naive level, so this team of artists used those sources directly to better inform their work. They of course also drew on the Fleischer Superman tunes, which were produced in the period of direct impact from these sources. The echoes to vintage cinema also acts as a great bit of emotional shorthand. There are clear throwbacks to It's a Wonderful Life or Citizen Kane in its storytelling as we flash back through Bruce's past, but, and this is something I wish more films and animated projects would get their head around, it's the fact that the film's texture itself harkens back to them. The heavy contrast, the grain of film or paint, the swell of the musical score, the sense of a time gone by, lost even, that whatever happens here has long been put to rest. What better world to depict the yearning nature of someone who constantly fears that his entire purpose is a fool's errand. Perfect for telling the story of Batman's origin. It doesn't outstay its welcome either. The other Batmen know they have to hit certain beats, the film sharing equal time with the love interest, the villains, or other actors they paid for. Often these are too evenly paced and lead to these big 2-hour sprawls cramming in every idea possible. Phantasm focuses on a tiny, well-constructed love story, and through the maudlin, wistful effect given off by the direction, turns simple moments into full operatic dilemmas. There's some incredibly creative shots that build intrigue upon uncomplicated ideas, and less urgency to force the characters into a scene or moment where they don't contribute to the main story threads. It allows every component to focus on the thematic relevance of our characters. Bruce Timm at a panel was asked what he felt was so enduring about Batman, and he was like, shit, I don't have a big answer. But then he said,
you know, there's all these different variations on it, but yeah, he's the good guy who dresses like the bad guy. You know, it's just, you can't beat it. So hopefully somebody else has something deeper than that, because I got nothing.
To me, that's exactly why Batman works. It's why Dracula is so visually enduring. The attraction of a taboo lifestyle, like stamp collecting. We've already seen how this works for Batman, often showing up as an untouchable silhouette and spooking his chums. The Phantasm itself is a direct reflection of this, another character with the same modus operandi as Batman visually, as well as a literal ghost of his past. Bruce now has a better perspective of how his work appears to others, and the consequences of what happens when you cross the moral line. It's the culmination of something the show's villains have always represented before them. While he hides in the shadows racked with self-doubt, other characters with huge egos strut about trying to unsuccessfully make up for their flaws. They all serve as reflections of his own psyche, so that when he's fighting them, he's really overcoming his own personal demons. Fear, identity, loss, power, ego, lust, morality,
Noreen!
and of course, madness. The encompassing trait that threatens to swallow everything else, and boy, is that relevant in Phantasm.
Joker.
So here's the thing about Batman. He's a man attempting to make sense of the tragedy in his life. The Joker gave up on that years ago. He figures if life is chaotic, then it's futile to control, and spends his time pressuring everyone else into this mindset. Batman fights in the guise of a monster, so Joker works through the face of a friend. Ironically, this is in itself its own sense of autonomy. His elaborate challenge is working only in front of an audience, and serving to increase the relevancy of his foe. A villain with that kind of love-hate duality is just ripe for being an illustration. He's a monster, but you can't help but look at this guy.
Yes! Another stunning Joker entrance leaves the crowd speechless! Let's hear it for him, folks!
Gee, tough audience.
A few years ago, I felt his inclusion was just a nice bonus and nothing more, but recently it became clear that this story doesn't work without him. Joker is simply the perfect distillation of Batman's entire struggle, which in turn makes him the perfect distillation of Andrea's struggle. The movie shows that even before he became the Joker, he was the symptom of a larger problem, something we kept ignoring and ignoring and ignoring until... He's the last piece of the puzzle. So when the film ends, we're not just at another cool showdown with the Joker, we're at the resolution, the scenario Bruce and Andrea were anticipating. I don't feel Joker is just madly reacting to his own impending demise, great as that is. I see it as him putting two and two together in a way we've never seen him do before, realizing that he finally caused two people to go to such passionate ends over someone completely dispassionate to their problem. They made this mess for him. That's the punchline. It's a moment of frightening clarity.
You think you know everything about me, don't you?
I dive at your bottom. I bloody well ought to, sir.
Well, you're wrong.
Perhaps there's one aspect that shines through the other variations, though. The portrayal of Batman himself. Much like how it's drawn, they end up saying a lot through very little. The animated series had run some 100 episodes, seeing Batman in a wide variety of situations, but the level of intimacy both identities were expressed through here was still pretty startling. We'd sort of seen this in episodes like Nothing to Fear or Perchance the Dream, which are both fantastic, but Phantasm explored those qualities outside of a hypothetical. I'm very glad this happened during the initial years of the show's design and direction. In Season 4, Bruce Wayne was just really boring. Just another successful, attractive billionaire type, and he basically never dropped his sense of superiority outside of the mask. Before then, he put on much more of an act, as if he were a big kid. You could actually believe that people wouldn't connect the two identities. With these two, you'd have to be blind. Or Lois. This was helped with by Kevin Conroy's unmistakable performance in the role, which in this season used to be more varied and matched incredibly well against the earthy tones of Dana Delaney. Voice actors with particular qualities to their vocals rather than just exaggerated sounds, who could focus on performance. Kevin was able to give us a Bruce we'd never heard before. Idealistic, uncertain, naive. It makes it so much more tragic when he finally does make the decision to forego that innocence completely, in a very powerful way. Don't misconstrue, Alfred isn't scared of Batman's appearance. He's terrified that Bruce Wayne has gone. A simple mask has vaporized any trace of the boy he raised, leaving him with a complete stranger. Alfred finds it hard to approach Bruce throughout the film, serving as the subtextual pulse for our observations, until the very end.
I always feared you would become that which you fought against. You walk the edge of that abyss every night. But you haven't fallen in, and I thank heaven for that.
There's a bunch of wonderful moments that subscribe to an idea I discussed in another video. This idea that haphazard emotional responses instead of reasoned out scenarios can deliver on some seriously lasting imagery. In that vein, I think one scene in particular really surmises the power of Phantasm's approach to Batman overall.
Please. I need it to be different now. I know I made a promise, but I didn't see this coming. I didn't count on being happy.
Now in every other film, Batman essentially turns to the audience and reasons with them about his identity, and it's almost always as Batman. Batman is always a logical choice he has come to, a personal torment he can justify. Whatever you're saying to me makes sense, but you don't understand. My readers understand, but you don't understand. Understand? What's wonderful about Phantasm is that it's treated fully as a delusion. The sight of Bruce Wayne bargaining for a way out with his dead parents is more powerful than Nolan's pontificating or Snyder's fan service. There is no reason Bruce should lose this argument. And yet...
I can give money to the city, they can hire more cops, let someone else take the risk, but it's different now.
For all its broadness, the film's just so raw. There's no half measures or apologies, the romance is classic Hollywood, the threatening elements are off-kilter and disturbing. A heavy cloud of melancholia dominates the entire feeling of the picture. The film had a particular effect on me from a young age. I didn't understand the words, nor the details, but I got the mood, the sense of utter unfulfillment, in the music, in the voices, in the colours. Other Batmen have been with me for just as long, or have affected me more in the moment, but Phantasm's shelf life improves as time goes on. The only thing that doesn't improve is the life of the title role. And that's, in a nutshell, the tragic timelessness of his appeal, and what this film embodies at last. You know, Phantasm wasn't the last of animated Batman, not by a long shot. There were a lot of projects after the show that adapted specific titles, or even spin-offs and one-shots that explored some really interesting ideas, from comics to entire new series. A lot of them are pretty great and have some iconic moments. Still, there's a nagging sense that they never had that same spark of ingenuity, and I worry that unlike Phantasm, they're starting to feel kinda lazy. And some are just... bad. As controversial as Killing Joke was, I think the real issue is how flat the whole thing felt outside of the medium that birthed it. Timm went on the record saying his heart was never truly in the project, and it compromises way too hard on the original art style to warrant being an animated adaptation. For something so seminal, you'd think they'd push the boat out on making it as cinematically interesting as possible. For as much as I proclaim Phantasm above the live-action films, the torch of quality it gave us has barely been carried over to the rest of the franchise, which has expanded considerably. There's so much shit on the fire, who can really pick and choose what to learn from now, not without getting your fingers burnt? I don't know what's happening in the comics anymore. Are we back to 2009 continuity again? Am I supposed to care about that thing they told me to specifically forget about? It's fine, we had Young Justice, we have Young Justice, we had Brave and the Bold, we did okay.
Earthquake!
Look, you can give Batman all the gadgets and gizmos the world has to offer. You can put him in the most comic-accurate costumes, or you can change his name to Zur-En-Arrh and make the Joker his mum. You can do all of this, and indeed you must and should. I think, however, it's worth reinvestigating the character's basic appeal. Phantasm re-examines what it means to be a big-screen Batman. Instead of trying to cram in loads of references, or being evasively cryptic, or doubling down on by-the-numbers adult content, it asked itself what made the character work for them and found the relevant textures to express that through. This is something we can totally learn from and try to apply in any medium. We're just waiting for the next person to come along and really do justice to this Liga. For Batman, for Superman, for any man. And women. She deserves a better actress. Whoops! Is that the dislike bar going up? Oh no, I ruined my video. Thanks for watching, guys. This one took a while. My good friend Cloud Cuckoo Country helped me with re-evaluating a couple bits and was incredibly helpful in getting the ball rolling again, so I'd appreciate you visiting his channel, which has some fantastic content. Check out my other things, which vary topics. I mean, what is this channel? Is it films? Is it games? Is it big Rames? I got a big team, so I'm tired, okay?